Imagine this. You wake up early every morning, go to work, stay disciplined, try to save money, and for a while it feels like you're finally making progress financially. Your bank account isn't empty anymore. You're earning more than you used to. Maybe you even started investing a little. But somehow, you still feel stuck. Because every time life starts getting better, a bigger financial decision shows up. And one of the biggest is buying a car. Suddenly everyone around you has an opinion. One friend says financing is stupid. Another says rich people finance everything. Social media tells you leasing is smarter. Financial gurus say buying cash is the only intelligent move. And now you're sitting there wondering, what's actually true? Because here's the thing. Most people aren't making car decisions based on logic. They're making emotional decisions disguised as financial ones. Status, comfort, validation, convenience. That's what's really driving most purchases. And today, we're breaking down the truth about buying, leasing, and financing, the part nobody talks about. My name is Demas, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. If you're someone who feels stuck financially, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Look, most people think cars are what destroy their finances. But honestly, that's usually not true. What actually destroys people financially are bad monthly obligations. It's the constant pressure of payments stacking on top of each other until your income no longer feels like freedom. And this is exactly why so many people who make decent money still feel broke. Because they optimized for appearance instead of flexibility. Here's what most people don't realize. A car payment doesn't just cost money. It quietly steals future opportunities. Less money to invest. Less freedom to leave a bad job. Less ability to handle emergencies. Less room to breathe. And the worst part? Most people don't even notice it happening until years later. That's why this conversation matters more than people think. Now, you've probably heard this advice 1,000 times before. Never finance a car. And on the surface, it sounds smart. Because nobody wants to pay interest. Nobody wants debt. Nobody wants to feel trapped by monthly payments. But here's the thing. Financial advice on the internet loves extreme opinions because extreme opinions get attention. Real life is more complicated because financing itself is not automatically bad. What matters is how financially disciplined you are after the loan starts. That's the part people ignore. Here's what most people don't realize. Two people can buy the exact same car with completely different financial outcomes. One person finances responsibly, invests consistently, and keeps their expenses under control. The other finances a car they emotionally wanted, overspends everywhere else, and slowly becomes dependent on their paycheck. Same loan, completely different result. Because money problems are rarely caused by one purchase. They're caused by patterns. Let's break this down with real numbers. Imagine you want to buy a $35,000 car. Option 1. You pay cash. Simple. No monthly payments, no interest. You own the car immediately. Now, most people stop there and assume this is automatically the smartest decision. But this is where it gets really interesting. Option 2. You finance the car at a low 4% interest rate over 5 years. Your monthly payment would be around $645, and over time, you might pay roughly $3,700 in interest. At first, that sounds terrible. But now ask yourself this. What happens to the $35,000 if you don't spend it immediately? If that money stayed invested and earned an average annual return of 8%, it could potentially grow to over $50,000 within 5 years. Suddenly, the conversation changes. Because mathematically, financing can actually outperform paying cash under the right conditions. But there's one problem. Most people never follow through with the investing part, and that changes everything. But this is exactly where most financial plans fall apart. People love the idea of investing the difference, but very few people actually do it consistently. Because discipline sounds easy in theory. Until real life shows up, a stressful week turns into expensive takeout. A bad day turns into online shopping. A salary increase turns into lifestyle inflation. And slowly, the money that was supposed to build wealth disappears into comfort and convenience. That's the hidden danger of financing, not the loan itself. The behavior that usually comes with it. Because once people realize they can afford the monthly payment, they start upgrading everything else too. Better apartment, nicer restaurants, more subscriptions, more spending disguised as rewards for working hard. And eventually they end up in the worst financial position possible. High monthly obligations, without actual assets growing in the background. Look, Debt only works in your favor when the money you keep becomes productive. Otherwise, you're not leveraging money. You're just borrowing against your future paycheck. Now let's talk about leasing, because this is where money becomes deeply psychological. Leasing is designed to feel affordable. That's why it's so attractive. You walk into a dealership, see a luxury car you normally could never justify buying, and suddenly the salesperson says, "It's only $650 a month." Only that single word changes everything emotionally, because people stop thinking about the total cost and start focusing only on the monthly payment. And that's exactly what makes leasing dangerous for so many people. Here's what most people don't realize. When you lease a car, you're basically renting a lifestyle. You get the excitement, the comfort, the status, the technology, but the payments never truly end. And psychologically, once someone experiences a higher standard of living, downgrading feels painful. This is called loss aversion. Humans feel losses more intensely than gains. So after driving luxury for 3 years, going back to a basic car suddenly feels like failure, even if it's financially smarter. And that emotional attachment quietly keeps people trapped in cycles of permanent payments. Here's one of the biggest differences between wealthy people and everyone else. Average consumers focus on what they can afford monthly. Wealthy people focus on what something costs them long-term. That mindset changes everything, because a $900 car payment doesn't just mean losing $900 every month. It also means less investing power, less flexibility, less ability to take risks, and less control over your future. Here's the thing. Every fixed payment quietly reduces freedom, and most people don't notice it because the payments happen gradually. This is why someone can make 6 figures and still feel financially trapped. Their income increased, but so did their obligations. Bigger car, bigger apartment, more subscriptions, more debt, and eventually, all their future income becomes pre-assigned before they even receive it. This is where it gets really interesting. Many wealthy people don't prioritize looking rich. They prioritize staying liquid and flexible, because flexibility creates opportunity, and opportunity is what builds real wealth over time. So what should you actually do? Well, the answer depends less on the car and more on your financial behavior. If you currently have high-interest debt, unstable income, low savings, or weak financial discipline, then minimizing monthly obligations is probably the smartest thing you can do right now. Because financial stability creates breathing room, and breathing room changes how you make decisions. Now, you might be thinking, so should everyone just buy cheap used cars forever? Not necessarily. Here's what most people don't realize. The smartest financial decisions are usually based on flexibility, not ego. If you already invest consistently, have emergency savings, stable income, and understand opportunity cost, then financing at a low interest rate can absolutely make sense. But only if the money you keep actually becomes productive. That's the key. Because financing should increase financial efficiency, not justify lifestyle inflation. Look, the goal isn't to impress strangers. The goal is to build a life where money gives you options instead of stress. Look, at the end of the day, buying, leasing, and financing are not inherently good or bad. They're just financial tools, and tools become dangerous when emotional decisions are disguised as logical ones. Because most people aren't actually asking, what's the smartest financial decision? They're asking, what makes me feel successful right now? And those are two completely different questions. Here's the thing. Nobody really cares what car you drive as much as you think they do. People are too busy dealing with their own lives, their own problems, and their own insecurities. But the financial pressure you create for yourself? You feel that every single month. That's why real wealth often looks boring from the outside. Quiet investments, low stress, financial flexibility, freedom to walk away from bad situations. That's the stuff that actually changes your life. So before you make your next big financial decision, ask yourself this. Am I buying freedom or am I buying appearance? Because the people who quietly win financially usually understand one thing very clearly. Freedom is always more valuable than looking rich.